Welcome to another Food Plotters Journal podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping landowners grow better food plots with less equipment, less work, and more success. My name is VanderVeen of Strategic Habitat, and my co-host is John Komp of Northwoods Whitetails Food Plot Seed. In this episode, John and I talk about whether it's better to separate your grains and brassicas or blend them together in the same plot. John also mentions what he's been doing the last few years to easily add some deer candy to your fall blend in poor soil conditions. And we talk about your best seed option and what not to plant as we get closer to Labor Day, especially in northern tier states due to cooler weather and shorter days. So with that said, let's get right into the call with John. So hey, how you doing, John?
Good. How you doing, Randy?
Real good. You burning the midnight oil still these days?
Yeah, we're working some late nights. Not as many as we have been this probably from March till beginning of August. Some long days, late nights, but quite a few people doing some last minute ordering, and we're rushing to get all that out the door because we know so many people in the northern half of the country want to plant, and a lot of people in the southern half, Kentucky and parts south of that, not in as big a hurry as we are up here, say in Michigan or Wisconsin.
Yep. So do you figure you're past the peak of this food plot season?
Well, yeah, I think so. I think last week started that we kind of, hit the peak a week or two ago, and I can see that you can see the numbers are starting to dwindle, but where we're sending it is really the dynamic of that is changing, where it's now you're starting to see it into the Kentuckys, the Oklahomas, the mid-tier states, and then we're getting quite a few phone calls from Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and talk with a lot of customers down there. So you can start to see that trend now is it's working south into the country, and it's kind of fascinating to watch it every year.
I'll bet. So yeah, it's almost like a migration of seed going out from north to south, huh?
Pretty much, yeah.
It seemed to me that it was a pretty good growing season for, food plots all the way from, I would say, Memorial Day all the way to now. I mean, a lot of guys seem to be getting a pretty good timely rain. Is that what you're seeing?
I saw that up here. We get because and I'd like to think it's because we're so close to Lake Michigan, we get a lot of pop-up showers where nobody else, Wisconsin or even over to Michigan, we just got a pop-up shower, and we seem to catch a couple good ones. Probably we were pretty dry through the month of July, and then or at the tail end of July, but we got our fall plots in, and then got some timely rains. I do know we got a lot of customers out on the western end of Minnesota, North Dakota that are just dry. In fact, I was talking to one today. He's just kind of wondering what to do. They want to drill their seed in, which is good, but he said it's bone dry for 6 inches, so. That's pretty tough conditions out there, but yeah, it seems like we're starting to get some decent timely rains.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of challenges have you seen this year? More, maybe anything that stood out this year more than other years that guys are having?
We had some challenges with the food plot screen. We try to include instructions with every bag that we send out because that particular variety of sorghum is very finicky. There's a lot of sorghums you can we call it for throw and grow, kind of spray and throw it out there. And Egyptian wheat does well because the spring 9 times out of 10 is usually pretty, you get timely rain. But we found with this particular strain that doesn't work. And even the guy that bred the sorghum for us, he had said the same thing. You got to get this in the ground. And we found a lot of challenges with folks that wanted to do the no-till, spray it and had germination issue, it just didn't grow. And that product is not designed for that. It's designed to be put in the ground, whether you drill it or, tillage and then scratch it in. It's got to be in that 1/2 inch to 1 inch level. And I've tried multiple times to no-till this with, again, the throw and grow system or broadcasting it and trying to pack it in, and it just doesn't work. So we had a lot of challenges with that. We had a lot of challenges with the screen with the cold weather in the upper Midwest. I remember getting frost here in June. Waking up one morning to come out to the shop and start on orders, and I remember seeing frost on our roof, and I thought, there's a lot of screens that got killed last night.
Oh man.
And that was unfortunate. Yeah, I mean, Mother Nature was. God bless those farmers, Randy, because it's stressful enough to try to grow an acre or two of food and screen for deer. But those farmers, boy, oh boy. But anyhow, yeah, we had some challenges with the screen, and we tried to help as many people as we could, but it was a great sales season, and met a ton of new people. It was really quite humbling to see how far we've come. But we're gonna have challenges this fall with things, and we're gonna have challenges next spring, and you got to just do the best you can, and help people the best you can, and try to put yourself in their shoes, and this, whether it's a screen or a little brassica plot or clover, is going to make or break their deer season, and you got to try to treat each situation that way, that it's like it was your own.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's
yep.
probably another reason why you don't want to plant like a single species in your food plot. I mean, a variety or a blend is always good insurance.
Yeah. I still, honestly, I still like that. We started, I think 2008, doing the Paul Knox, method with the red clover added to our rye, just for more organic nitrogen. And I'll tell you what, that's, when guys get into the drought or the flood in the spring or the summer, and that red clover there is just chugging along, I think it's a really good thing. So, that's I think our fall food plot here behind the house has got probably 10 or 12 species in it, and the deer are there already eating. So, diversity is a good thing.
Yep. So, speaking of, a variety and a blend, the Paul Knox method, like you're saying, where he puts his grain blend, your rye, oats, peas, winter wheat on one side of the plot, and then he'll put his brassicas on the other side of the plot, where other guys, they just mix it all together. So what's your feeling on that? I mean, what have you seen? Because you do the 3-strip method behind your house.
Yeah. I've tried dropping some purple top turnips in with that. I've tried dropping varieties of rape in with that. And the only brassica I found with that grain blend that works well is the tillage radish, because I believe it grows so fast and it grows pretty tall. And then the other thing, like our brassica blend, it canopies so quickly. I think down below our house here, I think it's going to be 3 weeks old coming up. It's awful close to being canopied already. Albeit I might have planted a little too thick. We look at what we're trying to do with a food plot, Randy. We're trying to create tonnage, volume, and as much green on a little space as possible.
Mm-hmm.
We're not feeding cows. We're not. I'll do a really diverse mix, like in our garden or some of our food plots, like with the soil builder. Okay, but I'm not trying to grow tonnage. I'm not trying to grow, food for the deer. I'm trying to grow food for the soil, which, the more diversity you can get into your soil, the better. That being said, when we've got our brassica that's got, I think, 7 different species in it, and it's soon to be 7 or 8 or 9. We found a couple more we really, really like. To me, to get the most tonnage with that, I really don't want competition from like a rye or an oat. We did try, just as an experiment back here, we dropped, I think per acre, we did, obviously the 6 pounds per acre, the sweet feast, and we did 10 or 12 pounds per acre we just dropped the buckwheat in. We just wanted to see, because I've got some theories on fall planted buckwheat. We've been doing it for years. And first thing the deer are eating right now is the buckwheat. They're not touching the brassica very much, but they're nipping that 3 and 4 inch tall buckwheat. So that's about. I did add some winter peas a couple years ago to my brassica, but I think, to answer your question, do I like mixing all that together? Not really. No, I don't think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
When you're trying to create a tonnage situation, especially with this brassica, the brassica will crowd out a lot of those clovers, but then a lot of those grains are just going to leach from that brassica. Now, if we had a situation where, so let's say we get to September 15th, September 20th, 25th, and those deer are just wiping that brassica out down below the hill here, then I'm going to drop some cereal rye on it. Absolutely. But no, I don't like those 8 to 10, 15 pound or 15 seed blends. And that's why we don't sell them. I think they just don't produce the tonnage like these strip systems do.
Yeah. Well, and if you think about it, for the guys that are going no-till, the optimal thing to have the following spring would be a nice stand of, winter rye that overwintered.
Right.
And,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that, you got to put enough rye down. And if you did that in a brassica plot, like you said, the brassica is not going to like all that competition. So, you almost have to separate it if you want a really nice stand of rye the following spring.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think guys are looking for then the following spring. They're gonna either do the buckwheat. I'm assuming. So let's just say we're gonna do the buckwheat method the following spring. A lot of those brassicas are gonna come back in the form of that yellow mustard plant.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing with buckwheat, it's one of those, and I see it all the time here when we're unloading seed. Once a week, we tear a bag, spill some seed the back of my truck. I could have probably filled a 55-gallon drum with everything we spilled in the back of my truck this year. We've dropped buckwheat in our gravel driveway, and within a rain, it's growing, albeit it doesn't last more than 2 weeks because it runs, it's trying to grow in a gravel driveway. But buckwheat, you could probably, that's one of those seeds that with your timely rain in the spring, you could spray Roundup, put the buckwheat down, cultipack it in, and it's going to do well because buckwheat, that's what buckwheat does. And
Yep.
cereal rye does the same thing. So do you necessarily need that rye thatch coming back? If you have a decent amount of moisture, it's not the end of the world if you don't have that rye. But if you're going to run that, if you need that rye the year, so let's say we need the rye next spring, you're probably going to sacrifice some of the tonnage of brassica this fall if you're going to put rye into it. Again, we've tried it. I've done it. I've seen, brassica 18, 22, 24 inches tall by itself, but then you smother it with rye and it's only 12 inches tall and the bulbs are like golf balls because, there's only so much nutrient in an acre of a food plot. And those brassicas, of all the food plots that we've planted, Randy, those brassicas, they're like, I describe them like a teenage boy. They eat and eat and eat to get to that big, to get to that size, will take a lot of nutrients where like a rye doesn't. But all the nutrients a rye or an oats or a whatever is growing in that brassica plot will rob from that brassica and kind of keep it smaller. That's just what we've seen with our experiments.
Yeah. So then if we talk about the grain side where we're putting cereal rye down, have you noticed an issue with putting too much rye down? I mean, does it the following spring, does it create too much of a layer of thatch that the following, like if you're going to plant buckwheat into it, let's say in May or June, that it has a tough time, or even soybeans, it has a tough time getting through that thick layer of rye?
We've done that with our garden, where we've run, in my best guesstimation, 200 pounds of rye, 50 pounds of rye. I think it all depends on what your planting method's going to be. I mean, so if you're going to, like, we've got an actual 7-foot crimper that weighs, I think with water in it, 1,400 pounds. Okay. And when we went with the 200 pounds of rye, we had to crimp it twice because that mat was, 4 inches thick. So you have to take into consideration, what is my equipment? What are my goals? What are we going to do next year? So, if you've got a lot of deer and rye is you can't grow brassicas because of sand or because of browse pressure, and you have to go heavy rye, obviously we want to do 200 pounds just to keep the groceries in front of those deer. Now, what do you do with that next year? Obviously, if you let it get to 5, 6, 7 feet tall at 200 pounds an acre, good Lord, you almost have a forest. Okay.
Yeah.
So a little ATV crimper, or, we're looking at building, we finally found somebody that's going to build our ATV crimpers. It's taken so long, but that's a whole nother story. But I don't think that crimper would work. Okay. The crimper that we've got designed, I don't think would work so I think you would have to do some spraying at maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, and you could get by with a cultipacker. I think we were talking earlier that if you watch like David Brandt or a lady I really like to watch, her name's Erin Sylvia. She's with UW-Madison.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when they were talking about the ideal planting for soybeans was 1 bushel of rye. Well, good grief, that's 32 pounds per acre.
Wow.
If you go to plant that for a deer, That's nothing. That's absolutely nothing. I mean, most guys that are listening now are doing 100 to 200 pounds of cereal rye, plus maybe some peas and oats and some radishes or something like that. So you have to look at, what are your goals? Are we trying to feed deer? Well, most of us and the folks listening to this are trying to feed deer, so we're going to do 100 to 200 pounds. And yes, that does produce a ton of biomass next year to deal with. So what are your equipment options? Can you spray? Can you, so there's a whole lot of questions to ask if you're going to get into this crimping, no-till. And we had talked before, and I said it really is cool to see this, because I think our soils need this. Plowing 3, 4, 5 times a year, I think is just not the way to go. But there's a lot of questions to be answered that, we've done a ton of research, which is we've had our crimper now for 5 years, and every year we've tried a few things, and it's kind of interesting to see what you can do and what you can't really get away with.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say that, because you mentioned possibly spraying the rye, instead of crimping it, especially if you've got too much, so maybe at 3 to 4 feet tall, a little bit earlier, you go to crimp it or spray it. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's what Jake Ealinger did. Did he tell you about that? I mean, he did like 3 different methods on planting this year. And I think he said that the best results was where he sprayed the rye first and then planted later.
Yeah, I think that's what he had said his best result was, because I think when he went to crimp the rye, it was 7 feet tall, and I don't remember what his population was pounds per acre, but like you said, I know we ran a 200 pound per acre test in our garden. It only got 6 feet tall, because our growing season is a lot shorter up here than it is Jake's. I think Southern Michigan, he probably got 2-3 weeks ahead of us. That's just some of the issues we've run into this year, where we've got to try to make an adjustment on what our goal is to feed deer, but now how do we deal with that the following spring when we want to keep doing the no-till, minimum till we've been working with the last few years. So it's cool, it's neat, the challenges that are faced with, and trying to work around them. It's been pretty cool to work with that.
Yeah. You talked about a shorter growing season up by you, and on the other end of that spectrum, man, I got a client down in Maryland who bought a bunch of cave and rock switchgrass from you, I think last year, and he planted about 30 to 40 acres of it. Man, John, I'm telling you, he just sent me pictures, and I mean, second year, this stuff is like 5 feet, almost 6 feet tall now.
Well, that was one of the other challenges we had with this particular growing season up here, the switchgrass. The longer we work with this, the more amazed I am with the switchgrass. We had some switchgrass this year that I thought was probably the most phenomenal I've seen as far as numbers. The hard seed versus, the germ, there's the total germ, and then there's the germination, and then there's the hard seed, and the combination of the germination and the hard seed equals the total germ. But so we had some phenomenal numbers, and I'm kind of looking at that. I'm going, boy, oh boy, that just seems too good to be true. But then we have an independent lab, I believe they're down in Georgia, that does our testing for our switchgrass. One of the things that we'd heard a lot of folks wanting to throw the towel in July, the switchgrass isn't here, I'm starting to get some weeds. And it's amazing how you can spray 3 or 4 times the previous fall, like last fall, 2020. Frost seed it this year, and somehow, some way, you're starting to get a flush of weeds. And it's Mother Nature is amazing that way. But anyhow, we had just cold soil. Like I said, I remember June seeing frost, and I just thought to myself, holy cow, this is bad, and especially if there was any switchgrass that had germinated, because I just don't know. And this was like a 27, 28 degree frost. And I thought, oh, good Lord. And then all of a sudden, once it started to warm up, we had 0 rainfall. I mean, none, and we didn't see warm weather till like the 4th of July up here. And I thought to myself, okay, so now we just went from ice cold ground to we're not going to see any rain for almost 3 or 4 weeks. And then, just talking to other people in Michigan, they just started seeing rain a couple of weeks, like a week or two ago. Maybe we had some storms roll through. So we had probably the worst year for switchgrass planting in the 5 years I've sold it. And, you got to feel for these guys that, switchgrass isn't cheap. And I saw some, the clean seed that we strive for was getting hard to get. And then I started to see the price gouging. I saw guys selling it for $900 a 50-pound bag. And I thought, you're out of your mind.
Wow.
I saw guys selling it for $18 a pound. And I just thought, are you serious? Really? I mean, are you going to plant it for me too? And I we're all businessmen and stuff like that, but I'm like, I can't do that. So whatever. I mean, to each is his own, but that's just my opinion. But anyway, we started to run low on switchgrass, and then these poor folks are calling me, this isn't germinated, the seed sucks, and and you gotta, I'm gonna go round up the whole thing and start all over, and you gotta talk these guys off the ledge. Just have some patience, just take your time. Okay, just give it time. I said the best thing you can do is don't even go look at it. Just go look at it at the middle of August, unless you think you have to mow it, and I think you'd be surprised. And we've probably encouraged more people to mow switchgrass this year than we ever have. I don't mind spraying, but once that switchgrass is growing, I'm deathly afraid of dropping anything on it. I just am, And what I tell people is if you're going to go spray something, whether it's switchgrass or clover with clethodim or brassicas with clethodim, take a little 2x2 foot spot and spray it, and then just walk away, come back 2 weeks later, make sure everything's still alive and it did what you want it to do. So, guys wanted to spray, and I'm like, oh man, I don't really want you to spray because I think the switch is coming. It's just waiting for the right conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was another challenge this year, was the switchgrass. That was, but it's amazing stuff when you get it right.
Yeah.
It's just, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I have found that on switchgrass, if you wait till it gets like 4 or 5 of those little blades coming off the main stem, that, I've sprayed it with 2,4-D, and I've taken care of, Palmer pigweed and ragweed and all that stuff. And it seems to work. And it didn't even really stunt the switchgrass. So, pretty fortunate there. And then as far as foxtail goes, a lot of guys were having problems with foxtail, and, quinclorac seems to work pretty good on that. So
yeah, we've talked to Jake Blow.
Mm-hmm.
We've had multiple conversations with him. We're gonna try it on our screen, because I did a screen behind our house, no fertilizer, no simazine, nothing. I just planted it and walked away, and it's growing decent, albeit it's 2 feet shorter than what it should be, and it's full of pigweed and it's full of foxtail. But I wanted to be able to fight my way out of it, to where, because we get the calls every year, what can I do now? What can I do now? Well, obviously the 2,4-D is going to kill the ragweed and the pigweed. Okay. So, but anyway, Jake had sent me some videos and some recipes with quinclorac and mineral oil. I think it was a mineral oil, to get the foxtail out of the screen. And I believe it's the same with the switchgrass. But again, I'm the type of guy where I'm going to go spray, let's say your screen's 10 feet wide. I'm going to spray a spot over here that if it dies, it's not going to really affect me that bad, but it's only going to be about a foot wide. We're going to spray the Johnson grass, or we're going to spray the pigweed. Let's see how it does. How does the switch or the screen take it? And then we're going to come back and then do the whole thing. I've heard horror stories of somebody that sprayed their whole screen. They thought it was 2,4-D and it was Roundup, and it killed the whole thing.
Man. Ouch.
It sucked. It really did. But that's, like I said, once I got something growing, I have a hard time convincing myself I need to spray it. So, but that's one of the things I always tell people that want to spray. That's fine, you can spray, but just do a small test area first.
Yeah. One thing, you were talking about temperature earlier, and I was going to ask you this, and I was doing a podcast with Brad Harper from Plot Doctor here a few weeks ago,
mm-hmm.
and the subject came up about what should the soil temperature be when you plant your plot screen. And I always thought it was like 50, 55 degrees. He thought it might have been 60. So now that we've got you here on the phone, what do you say? What's the temperature ideally got to be for plot
Well,
screen?
we've always had in the instructions 60 degrees. Okay.
50 or 60?
No, 60. 50 is too cold.
Okay.
Now this is coming right from the guy that bred the sorghum for us. And he said 60-degree minimum. Okay. And what we were finding is that guys were cheating that and dropping it. Well, if 60 is okay, I can get away with 55. So, and I get it. Like, you're up at camp. I'm not going to be back for 2 or 3 more weeks. I need to get the seed in the ground. We're going to plant today. And I understand that. Trust me. Life happens, and we got to do what we got to do. So we bumped it up to 65, and for his recommendation. But I think you can plant it at 60. But I just like to edge on the side of caution. But this year it was so freaking cold. I didn't plant my plot screen here till June 28th.
Wow.
That's the latest I've ever put plot screen in. It just wouldn't warm up here. We get a 70 or 80 degree day, but it was 45 to 50 at night. That soil's not warming up. It might be warm on the surface, but down below where the roots are going to go. So what happens is that sorghum, and I'm just speaking for our plot screen. I don't, what anybody else has got or whatever. I don't know. But our plot screen sorghum, it just kind of sits there waiting for the ground to warm up. And then if you get a lot of moisture, the seed rots. So that's one of when I was talking before about the germination issues, that's what we were finding. So if you're in a heavy clay, like down below where our pond is, where our food plot is, Randy, it doesn't drain the greatest. So that particular spot, I wanted it to be upper, above 60 degrees. But now if you were in, say, like where Brad is, or let's say Grayling, Gaylord area, where it's a lot of sand and there's not a lot of moisture being held in that ground, I think you can get away with 58, 59 degrees. Or like central Wisconsin, a lot of sand. Stevens Point area, a lot of sand.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of sand there, so there's not a lot of moisture in that ground. So you might be able to drop down 3 or 4 or 5 degrees. So, but that stuff's temperamental. But if you get it right, it's pretty phenomenal.
Yep. So I'm assuming that pretty soon, we're going to be starting to see guys posting questions about, hey, is it too late to plant my food plot yet this year? So, you see that every year, and
yeah,
it really starts getting, a lot of guys start getting nervous after Labor Day. So after Labor Day, in your recommendations, what should guys not plant anymore and just opt to go with something else that's going to be more dependable?
Well, and it's kind of like what we're seeing now, that curve. We're not selling a whole lot of brassicas to folks in Michigan anymore. Northern Wisconsin, central Wisconsin. You're going to want to get your brassicas in the ground, say north of Grand Rapids, like now. After Labor Day, it depends on what state we were in. If we were in Michigan and we wanted to get something in the ground, what's the 10-day forecast look like? If the 10-day forecast is it's going to rain within 3 days, obviously we're going to do rye, maybe some oats. Again, if you can find it, I'm really liking, for about the 4th year in a row, adding fall planted buckwheat to these cereal grains as a candy crop. And I think this is the 4th or 5th year we've done it now. And it works extremely well. We just talking to a gentleman that's got real sandy soil in lower Michigan, and he's getting ready to put rye in. And I said, you know what? I said, if you can find it, but because, usually this time of year, buckwheat's really hard to get, add some buckwheat at about 15, 18, 20 pounds an acre. And because in that sandy soil, we'll recommend, depending on what part of the state it's in, it might be just straight rye and oats, or it might be our fall forage with the peas in it. And if it's really sandy soil, I won't recommend the fall forage because the peas are going to struggle. But you can drop buckwheat on it, and that will work just fine. So I think next year we're going to have some sort of a mix with some fall buckwheat added to it, because we've had so much success the last few years. Now, if you were down in, say, like Kentucky, southern Illinois or Indiana or something like that, you're at the tail end of planting brassicas. Some of our green forages, our fall forage, plenty of time to get that in. One of the things, if you're planting something, you got to look at when your frost date's going to be. is there something in your mix that's susceptible to frost, say like a buckwheat? Okay, buckwheat. Our buckwheat's been in the ground here 3 weeks, and some of it's already 6 inches tall already. But the deer are browsing the heck out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got something that's gonna be susceptible to a frost, are you gonna have enough daylight? As we get later into the fall, you're losing daylight. The sun's getting lower in the sky every day. Are you going to have enough growing period to justify having that particular mix, or do we need to just go with something that frost doesn't bother? So obviously the rye is a standby. Oats grows really quick. Our oats, I think I've seen our oats stay green down to mid-20s, and the deer still eat it. So those two would be a good choice. Our brassicas, I just don't know if you get the volume. If you were going to overseed them with rye, then that would be a situation where you got brassicas growing, you overseed it with rye. But yeah, I think, like here in Michigan after Labor Day, I think oats at like 25 to 30%, and then the rest cereal rye probably is going to be a good result for you.
Yeah, exactly.
After Labor Day. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I've been recommending to a lot of landowners that they put out a couple of exclusion cages on their plots, because I seem to be getting more, guys calling me up and saying, man, this plot just isn't growing, and they don't have a trail camera out there. So they can't tell if it's the deer or what, and clover's kind of hard to tell if it's being browsed hard, versus, buckwheat or brassicas is pretty easy to see. But yeah, exclusion cages is just a great way to tell how successful your food plot's doing.
When we were first developing the seclusion blend, we planted it at one of my friend's backyard food plots where he watches the deer, and he's like, calls me up. He says, I just don't think the stuff is growing. Well, we went and checked he couldn't see where the cage was. Well, outside the cage, they had it nipped down to the ground like sheep. Inside the cage, it was 7 inches, 8 inches tall. And I'm like, well, that answers your question. So yeah, so those cages, as long as they don't bother the deer, yeah, those are amazing how you can see how how fast that forage gets eaten. Yeah.
So, John, before we wrap up, you got anything? You got any new things cooking over there on North Badenoch Road that you want to tell anybody about, or what?
Yeah, we're actually, I think next Monday and Tuesday we have concrete being poured for a brand new shop. We were fortunate enough to buy some property just north of our house here, adjoining to our land. Yeah, we're taking a big step. We're putting up I believe it's a 40 by 80 shop, semi-access, which is desperately needed. You've been to our shop here, Randy, in Menominee, and we're just flat out of room. There's a lot of things we want to do. There's a lot more products we want to bring to the market. Dozens of folks that are asking for dealerships all over the Midwest that we, quite honestly, would love to have, but we can't. We've got I think 6 dealers now, and I have a hard time keeping them in stock. And yeah, it's been a true blessing, the success we've had, and obviously you're a big part of it, in your listeners. But yeah, we're living the American dream. We started this little business I think 9 years ago on a kitchen table, and to think that probably a month from now we're going to be able to move into a 3,200 square foot facility and we've already put the footprint for an addition on already. The footprint's there.
Oh my word!
We've got big plans. We've got some pretty awesome opportunities presented to us, Randy. So
awesome.
The future is really bright for us, and I thank the good Lord every day the position we've been put in, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. I don't think we're going to get much hunting in this year. I think I've been on the tractor a total of 2 hours this year, just because the season we've been so busy, and we're going to be helping the workers and doing a lot of the work ourselves on this new shop. So can't wait to move in. It's just so gosh darn cramped in this little shop we've got here now, but it's been an amazing year.
Yeah. Well, I know that to get to where you're at today, I know you've had a lot of help from Stephanie and Nate and Carly, and you did what had to be done, right?
You talk about burning the midnight oil. I can remember last year, with COVID, there wasn't a whole lot to do, and we did work 6 in the morning till 2 in the morning, and you get back up the next day and get at it again, and that's. But like I said, we've got thousands of wonderful customers, and we've got great partners like yourself. That you get the word out for us, and we try to do our best with everybody that whether they buy a 1 pound of radishes or, I think tomorrow we're sending 2,500 pounds down to Texas on a pallet. We try that person in Texas is as important as that person to us that bought that 1 pound of radishes. And I had a lot of sleepless nights. We were talking about the switchgrass problems and the screen problems. There's, you go to bed thinking about it and worrying about it, and you wake up worrying about it and thinking about it. And it's part of being a business owner. But I would rather see our customers have success than so much myself.
Well, John, I can tell you, I get a lot of feedback from several landowners who have bought from you, and I will say that a lot of them are really appreciative of the time that you give them on the phone or in an email. You take the time to answer their questions, and a lot of them say, hey, I can't get that kind of service from some of the national brands, and I mean they're customer for life.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate that, Randy. I do. But what happens is, like I said, now our customer base is into the thousands. I feel terrible when I'll feel like we were cleaning up our junk folder the other day, and there was like 6 questions in there. A couple of them were 10 days old, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel horrible. But no, it's a great story up here. It's really cool. And again, I can't thank everybody that's ever bought, whether they bought a pound of radishes or some Brassica or everything like that. I hope that we try our best to bring the best products to market that we can. And, now we're going to be able to get things, 2 weeks ago, we were like 5 days behind. And I'm, like I said, you have a hard time sleeping at night going, oh my God, I got, all these orders we got to get out. I know guys want to plant, and now hopefully this is going to alleviate a lot of those problems. And like you said, we're looking at bringing that roller crimper to market finally. We just don't have any room up here for it. Probably some deer blinds and a lot of stuff for the local guys. We can have a retail shop and just try to take care of things that need to be taken care of that were just physically impossible to do here in this little shop. So
yeah. I think I can hear guys asking the question in their mind already. So is that roller crimper going to be available for market next year?
Honestly, we don't know. We've had multiple fabricators wanting to build it, but then the problem is that there's a price point that we want it to be at, and nobody could really meet that price point. So we found a guy that does this part-time. We're looking at that. We're hoping to do something this winter, even this fall. But, is it going to be there next year? Gosh, I hope so. We've been talking about it for 3 years. But it's just, I'm not going to bring something just for the sake of bringing something. We want it to be, it's kind of like anything else we've done. If it's not right, we're not going to do it. So yeah. I think we've got a pretty good situation with that. And hopefully we can have, because we got a lot of guys asking about it. So we're hoping to have that, but then, we want to bring a lineup, a product line that's going to be conducive to using that crimper. And then, like I said, we got to figure out what the right ratio of rye is and that kind of thing to make that work. So yeah, we got all sorts of things going on up here that finally we'll have some time and some space to do it. But how about you? You got anything cooking this fall? Are you going out to Wisconsin again to hunt, or?
Yeah. I'm going to be going to Wisconsin again, and just love it out there. And my habitat season is kind of winding down. Labor Day is generally kind of like the landowners aren't too crazy about walking their properties at that time.
Oh,
so
absolutely.
no, that's all good. It allows me to go hunting, right? So
I'm kind of thinking with all the building stuff we got going on over here, I don't know how much time I'm going to be able to get in the trees. So I'm going to make the most of it when I do get out there. So
Yep.
I'm looking forward to some relaxation, but I think I got a lot of work to do before we get that far.
Okay. All right, John. Well, hey, we ought to check in again with each other here. Maybe a little closer to Labor Day or just after that, and
sure.
see what's new, and maybe I'll pass along some questions that I've been getting from some people, and we'll do another one here.
That sounds good. I got a few guys that are asking some questions. Maybe we'll save them for this. So that sounds like a plan.
Okay. Sounds good, John, and good catching up with you again.
Sounds good, Randy. Thanks. Take care.
All right. We'll see you.